Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, a title held, of course, by his late father, Prince Philip, for more than 70 years. It had been the late Prince's wish for Prince Edward to be granted the dukedom after his
generations. Royal titles followed a simple rule. They passed from father to son. But in recent years, that rule has quietly been broken, and it has created a complicated situation inside the monarchy. At the center of it is Prince Edward, a royal holding a title that will not pass to his own son, while another title is shared between them in an unusual way. With tradition shifting and questions growing about the future, many are now looking toward the plans of King Charles III. So, how did it come to this? And what happens next? Join us as we break down the full story. If there is anything the royal house has taught us, it is that the most difficult stories are not understood from the surface. Rather, they are understood when you look beyond the announcements themselves and focus on the timing, the structure, and the quiet decisions underneath what is publicly stated. In this case, it all started in 1999 when Prince Edward married Sophie Rhys-Jones at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. Everyone assumed he would receive a dukedom. That was the tradition. That was what his brothers had received. Prince Charles had become the Prince of Wales and Duke of Cornwall. Prince Andrew had become the Duke of York. Edward was next. The dukedom was ready. The expectation was not speculative. It was almost automatic within public understanding of how royal marriages of senior princes were treated. A dukedom signified status, hierarchy, and continuity within the royal structure. And then the palace announced something nobody had expected. Edward would not be a duke. He would be an earl, specifically the Earl of Wessex. The reason behind that choice, according to reports after the wedding, was one of the most unusual origin stories in modern royal history. Edward had reportedly become drawn to the title after watching the 1998 film Shakespeare in Love, in which the character Lord Wessex is played by Colin Firth. The idea that a royal title could be influenced by a film character was unusual enough to stand out immediately. A future British duke choosing his title because of a period drama is not the kind of detail that appears in official palace statements, but it is also not the kind of detail that is easily invented. Whether it was the defining reason or simply a contributing influence has never been formally clarified, but the association between the title and the film has persisted in commentary ever since. So Edward became the Earl of Wessex, and Sophie became the Countess of Wessex. Alongside that announcement came a promise. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Edward would eventually receive the Duke of Edinburgh title, held by his father, one of the most prestigious titles in the royal family. But not yet. Not while Prince Philip was alive. Not while the Queen remained on the throne. The timing was intentionally left open. That process took 24 years. During that time, Edward and Sophie expanded their public roles, supporting charities and maintaining a steady presence within the monarchy. They were not always at the center of attention, but they were consistent. Then everything changed. Prince Philip died in 2021. Queen Elizabeth II died in 2022. And on Edward's 59th birthday in 2023, King Charles III officially granted him the Dukedom of Edinburgh. The promise was finally kept. Edward became a duke. Sophie became a duchess. Their son James, previously styled Viscount Severn, became the Earl of Wessex as a courtesy title. But almost immediately, legal questions began to surface. Because the way King Charles granted the title was not traditional. He gave it as a life peerage. And that detail changes everything. A life peerage is held by one individual and does not pass to descendants. It is personal, not dynastic. When Edward dies, the Duke of Edinburgh title will not go to James. It will return to the crown and can only be recreated by a future monarch. This is completely different from the Earldom of Wessex, which Edward has held since 1999. That title is hereditary. It will pass to James. So now, two systems exist side by side. One title continues through inheritance. The other ends with a single life. As of now, Edward holds both the Dukedom of Edinburgh and the Earldom of Wessex. James uses the title Earl of Wessex as a courtesy. This creates a unique overlap. The father holds the title formally. The son uses it by convention. When Edward dies, the dukedom ends. James then formally inherits the Earldom of Wessex. But the situation is even more complex. Back in 1917, King George V issued rules determining who could use the title Prince and the style His Royal Highness. Under those rules, James is legally entitled to be called His Royal Highness Prince James of Edinburgh. But he has never used that title. Edward and Sophie chose to raise their children without royal titles, allowing them to decide at 18. When James turned 18, he chose not to use it. However, legally, that entitlement still exists. It has not been removed, only left unused. And that creates a rare situation. In legal terms, James exists in three positions at once. He is the courtesy Earl of Wessex. He is the future hereditary Earl of Wessex. And he is someone entitled to be a prince, even though he does not use the title. This kind of overlap is extremely unusual. Most royal cases are clear. Titles are either used or formally removed. But here, nothing has been removed, nothing activated, and everything remains legally valid. Experts describe this as an inactive entitlement structure, where rights exist but are not exercised, yet still must be recorded. Because in the monarchy, it is not just about what is visible. It is about what is legally possible. So when Edward's lawyers began formally confirming the structure of his titles, the His Royal Highness entitlement could not simply be ignored. It had to be acknowledged within the legal framework. Not because James is expected to use it, and not because there is any intention for him to change his position, but because the legal architecture of the monarchy does not allow silent exceptions. Everything must either be used, removed, or formally recorded as existing but inactive. That is where the complication lies. And that is why constitutional commentators describe this situation as unusual, not because it is controversial, but because it requires multiple layers of royal law to be considered together. The peerage system, the letters patent system, and the rules of courtesy titles are all operating simultaneously within one family line. Because beneath the legal structure lies a deeper question, timing, and whether Edward's dukedom was always intended to function this way. Before the current situation can be fully understood, there is a chapter often overlooked. The dukedom of Edinburgh very nearly did not happen at all. When Prince Philip died in 2021, the title passed automatically to Charles. When Charles became king in 2022, the title merged with the crown and ceased to exist. At that point, it was entirely his decision whether to recreate it for Edward. And for a time, the answer appeared to be no. In 2021, reports suggested that Charles had decided not to grant the title. This was not denied by Clarence House. At the same time, Edward had been steadily increasing his workload, taking on more responsibilities during a period of transition within the royal family. The reaction to those reports was strong. Many observers felt Edward had become one of the most stable working royals, especially through his long involvement with the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, one of Prince Philip's most important legacies. There were also broader concerns. The title carries symbolic importance in Scotland, and any decision involving it had political sensitivity. Discussions reportedly considered how granting the title might be received in a changing political climate. Only later, as circumstances shifted, did the situation evolve. By 2023, the environment had changed enough for the decision to move forward. On Edward's birthday, the announcement finally came. The promise made decades earlier was kept, but in a carefully controlled way. Because the title was not made hereditary. It was created as a life peerage, meaning it carries its own endpoint. And that decision connects directly to the future of the monarchy. When Edward dies, the title will return to the crown. And that is where the next chapter begins. According to reports, one possible future holder is Princess Charlotte. As a senior member of the direct line of succession, her future role will continue to grow. If the title is given to her one day, it would carry enormous symbolic meaning. A title once created for Prince Philip, passed through generations, and then carefully managed, could return in a new form, this time to a female royal in the direct line. That possibility exists only because the title was structured as a life peerage. If it had been hereditary, it would have passed to James, closing that path completely. This is what people mean when they talk about a slimmed-down monarchy. Titles are no longer just inherited, they are being managed with long-term purpose. But beyond legal structures, there is another layer to this story. Between 2020 and 2023, the working royal family became significantly smaller. Prince Harry and Meghan stepped back. Prince Andrew withdrew from public duties. This left a smaller group carrying the institution: King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, Princess Catherine, Princess and Edward and Sophie. During this period, Edward and Sophie quietly took on more responsibility. They did not seek attention or recognition. They simply continued working. Their approach was consistent rather than visible, and that consistency became more noticeable as others stepped away. Sophie, in particular, was often described as steady and reliable during a time when public attention on the monarchy was intense. This context makes the Edinburgh title even more meaningful. It was not given quickly or easily. It came after decades of service, uncertainty, and patience, and even then, it came with limitations. Edward accepted it without public reaction and continued his duties, reinforcing a pattern that has defined his role: stability over visibility, duty over status. Their children have followed a similar path. Lady Louise has focused on education and normal work life, studying at St. Andrews, the same university where Prince William and Catherine met. James, now 18, has shown no interest in royal titles. Despite being entitled to His Royal Highness, he has chosen not to use it. That entitlement remains legally available, but inactive. Both children had the option. Both declined it. In a royal family where others have stepped away more dramatically, this quiet distance stands out. It reflects not rejection, but a different interpretation of what royal roles mean today. So, where does this leave things now? Edward's legal team is continuing to formalize the structure, confirming how titles will pass, how the transition will be handled, and how unused entitlements are recorded. There is no urgency, but there is complexity. For James, the future is relatively clear. He will inherit the Earldom of Wessex and the Earldom of Forfar. He will not inherit the Dukedom of Edinburgh. He will always have the option to use Prince and His Royal Highness, but has shown no intention of doing so. For the dukedom itself, the future remains open. When it returns to the crown, it could be recreated for Princess Charlotte, depending on the circumstances of that time. Nothing is certain, but the structure to allow it has already been built. What is happening now is not chaos, it is careful planning. A promise made decades ago has been fulfilled in a way that serves the future of the monarchy, not just the present. And in that process, we see how the modern monarchy is being reshaped, not just through public appearances, but through the quiet management of titles, roles, and long-term strategy. So what do you think? Should the Duke of Edinburgh title one day go to Princess Charlotte? And do Edward and Sophie deserve more recognition for their role? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.